That's kind of fun. I think we're live on Facebook as well, so that's good too. So hey everybody, we're live on Instagram and Facebook, and that's just kind of fun. So
trying it new.
Yeah, trying a new thing.
Tonight.
I didn't warn her. I said, hey, we're gonna go live on Facebook. We might as well do Instagram too, right?
Yes.
She said.
But then I kept talking and being silly, and I didn't realize we'd started live on Instagram.
And we do have some folks on Facebook as well. So when you come in on Facebook, make sure you say hello. And let us know where you're from. And it's just a fun way for us to get together tonight. We already did this to Instagram, but Facebook. Hi, my name is Johnny. I'm a believer. I struggle with alcoholism and codependency. And with me is...
Hi, and I'm Jenny, and I'm a believer who struggles with codependency and adult child family dysfunction.
We are so glad to be with both of you tonight. And if it's your first time joining us here on Facebook Live, we do this 7 nights a week, different people from the national team. Mm-hmm. And we're really glad to be with you tonight. Before we go too much further, we just want to talk about today is Juneteenth.
Yes.
And whenever we talk about these things, especially in the climate that we're in right now, it's just important to educate ourselves.
Absolutely.
And to do some digging and to do some research on those things. So if you haven't done that, I would really encourage you to. It's a very important day in American history.
A very important day that actually, and maybe this is a really terrible thing to admit, especially to a live audience, but I didn't really know what Juneteenth was until watching Blackish, the TV show Blackish.
Yeah. And
that was the first place that I learned about Juneteenth. And I think how sad that that's the first place that I learned about it. I mean, I'm thankful that I did. And I remember thinking, how could I have not known about this before?
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us?
Juneteenth is, I think a lot of us have misunderstood it, thinking it was the day that slavery was abolished, and that's not true. It's actually the day the last federal marshals went in, or federal, I don't know, I said marshals like I know what I'm talking about, but representatives went into Texas and they made sure that all of the slaves were freed 2 years actually after the Emancipation Proclamation. And so it's a big holiday, and it's something that we need to talk about and think about. And I would really encourage you, if you haven't yet, to I know with all of the things going on in the world, there's a lot more recognition and a lot more kind of awareness to some of these things, but I'd really encourage you to check out some resources to help in these matters. Celebrate Recovery, we're trying to do a number of things, and if you haven't checked out the summit yet, I would encourage you to go to crsummits.com, because you and Cheryl Luke have some really exciting things you're going to talk about. Cheryl Luke is our National Director of Cultural Communities. But there's some other things you can do in the meantime as well, and I think, why don't you talk about Be the Bridge for a second, because I think that's such an important
Okay, so Be the Bridge is a resource that I have found out about recently, and I wish I knew off the top of my head how long it's been going, but Latasha...
I think 4 years.
4 years.
I saw 4 years.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yes, they think they just celebrated their 4-year anniversary as a foundation, but Latasha Morrison is the founder of Be the Bridge, and what she has done is she has started this foundation for people who want to be a part of racial reconciliation, if they want to be the bridge, and it's fantastic because she has resources for people of color, and she has resources for white people who want to join the conversation, and so on. And so if it's been a place where I have been able to go and learn a lot myself, and I really value...
Go ahead. I'm getting a word that we have a strange clicking sound, so just 1 second.
It's a very valuable foundation. It has lots of resources. I've already learned a lot, and I've just barely scratched the surface of all the resources that she offers and that her foundation offers. So Be the Bridge, I highly recommend it. Check it out.
I don't know if I fixed the problem, Nikki, but thanks for letting us know about it, and we'll do our best. So I would encourage you to do that as well. And there's so many different resources out there to educate yourself on this, and it's really just important that we do. Before we move on to what we're going to talk about, though, we do want to talk about Celebrate Recovery Summit. It is live on July 30th and 31st. Go to crsummits.com to register. $49 a person. Register 5, get a 6th person free. Mm-hmm. You can see all the different people who are going to be speaking at the summit and all the different things we're going to be speaking about. We're going to be speaking together.
Yes.
We're really excited about that. And you're also going to be speaking with Cheryl Baker.
Yes, with Johnny's mom, my mother-in-law. We have 2 talks together, which I'm so excited about.
Yeah. There's so much. It's going to be such a great
and it's all
couple
new.
Of days. All new stuff.
I don't think I even knew that. I think I read that and I went, oh, it is all new. It's all new.
Yeah, every talk is new. So if you've been to a summit before, it's brand new. And a lot of it is going to be geared towards participants as well as leaders. In the past, if you've been to the summit, you know that a lot of it has been geared towards participants. This year, it's going to be really, towards leaders. This year is really kind of for everybody. So if you have never been to a summit before, maybe you're brand new to this and you've only been going to Celebrate Recovery since quarantine or for a few weeks, you're thinking, is the summit for me? It is. We would love for you to join us, crsummits.com. What I'd really encourage you to do if you're going to sign up 5 or more people is to take that extra 6th one. And if you send up 10 people, you get 2. If you sign up 15, you get 3, and so on and so forth. Take those free logins and give them to people who you want to know more about Celebrate Recovery, either for themselves or for someone in your church. Maybe a pastor, the senior pastor, the care pastor, somebody who's over small groups or something like that. And you've been talking about Celebrate Recovery and they're just kind of having a hard time understanding. That'd be a great person to give that third option to, or that free ticket to.
Free ticket. Yeah, and we keep talking about how it's for participants this year, but there is so much value for leaders too. Leaders, we have not left you out. Everything is applicable to personal recovery, but also things you can take back as value to your leadership in CR as well. So we haven't dropped that part off. We have just expanded it to where there's a lot about personal recovery in there. Yeah,
and it's going to be a great couple of days. We've got the Skit Guys, we've got Hosanna Poetry, we've got Dr. John Townsend, we've got Pastor Rick and Kay Warren.
Yes.
We've got so many big things coming. We're going to have worship. It's really going to be a great couple of days. And then it's going to be available to watch a week later.
I know,
which is so cool. So we were talking about 48 hours, and with all the time zones and different things, we wanted to make it available to watch longer than that as well. So that's a really cool thing. So what you can do is you can watch it and kind of the first time kind of like skim a little bit and listen, because I know sitting down at a computer for 2 days straight, I know for me would not happen. And so maybe you're going to sit down and you're going to read a little, or you're going to watch a little bit, and then you can watch some of the other talks later on and that kind of stuff. But we really would love for you to be with us during that time. One thing we're going to be talking about at the summit is, what is Celebrate Recovery and how do I know it's for me? And what we really wanted to talk about tonight is, we want to just impress upon everyone that Celebrate Recovery is a safe place. It's a safe place for you to find healing from your hurts, hang-ups, and habits. And at the summit, we're going to be going into this in detail. But we really wanted to focus on one thing in particular that keeps our group safe. And you wanted to talk about something before we really even get into that.
Well, you can say what we're going to talk about.
Okay, we're going to talk about the guidelines, because the guidelines of a Celebrate Recovery group are one of the 2 or 3 things that really make sure you as a participant are safe when you come to Celebrate Recovery. Because I know for me and for many people, the first time coming to Celebrate Recovery and sharing about their hurts, hang-ups, and habits, sort of looking around that circle and saying, man, anybody here could talk about this, or how do I know this is a safe place? And the guidelines are one of the things that you can be sure Celebrate Recovery is a safe place, because we have those in place.
100%. 100%. And what I wanted to share with you is actually at our Christmas party this last year for Celebrate Recovery for the leaders on our campus, Pastor Rick stopped in for a quick time just to say a quick word of encouragement and say hi to everybody. And he told this story from the Bible that I'd heard, and it's a common one, I'm sure we've all heard it before, but he hit a point that I'd never actually looked at it from that perspective before. And I just wanted to share with you, because I was going to talk about it. I was going to do a talk on the guidelines specifically.
You're kind of passionate about the guidelines.
I love the guidelines. Yeah. And I've had the chance to teach on them the past couple of years. And so I was going to again, but then we restructured some things and shuffled some things around. So I'm just going to share a quick point about them that I was really excited to share at the summit. So I'm going to read from John 8, and it's a story about the adulterous woman. All right, let's see. Now the scribes and Pharisees, this is John 8:3, by the way. Now the scribes and Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. They made her stand in the center of the court. And they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the very act of adultery. Now the law of Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" They said this to test him, hoping that they would have grounds for accusing him. But Jesus stooped down and began writing on the ground with his finger. However, when they persisted in questioning him, he straightened up and said, He who is without any sin among you, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. Then he stooped down again and started writing on the ground. They listened to his reply, and they began to go out one by one, starting with the oldest ones, until he was left alone with the woman. Straightening up, Jesus said to her, "Woman, where are they? Did no one condemn you?" She answered, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, I do not condemn you either. Go now, from now on sin no more. And so whenever I'd heard that story taught, it's always focusing on how on the reaction of the men there, how they went, oh, okay, how Jesus handled it. If whoever who's without sin, go ahead and cast that first stone. And the men kind of going, oh, okay, yeah, that's not me, I gotta go.
Right. And
pointing out that the older ones left first, maybe because they're more wise, maybe they're more aware of what they've done in their lives, that they're not without sin. I've heard some, guesses on what it is he was writing in the sand. But what Pastor Rick focused on, which I thought was really lovely, and I never thought about this before, is that he protected this woman's dignity. And I loved that. He talked about how important it is that Jesus protected her dignity, because he didn't accuse her of anything in front of anybody. He protected her. And then what he said to her, he corrected her, he did it in private when no one else was around, after everybody had left. So publicly, he protected her, and privately, he corrected her. And that private correction is what protected her dignity. And what he went on to say, and I agree with, is that Celebrate Recovery protects our dignity because it's a safe place to come and find healing. And I think so much of the time, when I went back and I reread that again, and it says that they brought this woman to him and they made her stand in the center of the court.
Right.
And I think that's so humiliating, to be shoved into the middle in front of everybody and put on display, and what you've done wrong put on display right in the middle of everybody. And I think that sometimes it can be really scary going into recovery for the first time. I know that I was really scared. I talk about that a lot, that fear has kept me from getting into recovery early on. And I think that fear that you're going to walk in there and feel like that, like you're being thrown into the middle of the court and everybody's going to stare at you and see you walk in and know what it is that you've done
you have
wrong.
to get up on stage and say, these are all the things I've done, all the mistakes I've made, and all those things.
And instead, Celebrate Recovery protects our dignity. And I love that word, dignity. I think there's so much power in that word. And so I wanted to look it up. I think I'm really drawn to that word, and I wanted to look it up. And the definition says, the state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect. And then another article says, treating other people with dignity means treating them the way we'd like to be treated ourselves. Dignity is one of the most important things to the human spirit. It means being valued and respected for who you are. It's where we get our self-worth. Having dignity, feeling dignity is so important.
Yeah, there's such richness there.
And I love that Celebrate Recovery protects that, and it's safe. And one of the reasons it's safe, like we said, like Johnny said, is the guidelines. And I love the guidelines.
Yeah. There's a couple of things about that story, too, that I always love. One is that, like, where's the guy, right?
Yeah.
They caught the woman being adulterous. Yeah. Where's the guy?
Yeah.
Always just sort of like, that's interesting. And then, you know, what many people, they talk about what did Jesus draw in the sand. You know, what they don't know is that he drew the Celebrate Recovery small group guidelines.
Oh my God.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Wow. I was like, wow, that's bold.
No, he didn't really do that. But I think that, I agree. The Celebrate Recovery small group guidelines, they protect our dignity, and they actually provide an area for us to find healing.
Yes.
We're going to read the guidelines. We're going to explain each of them in just a few minutes. But one of the things that's so important about the guidelines is that for many of us, they feel foreign. When you first start coming to Celebrate Recovery and you hear the guidelines read, it feels like, how is this going to help?
Yeah.
And what we learn is that, or what I have learned at least, there's a guideline, right? What I have learned is that the guidelines are so powerful and so protective. I wish that they were used in casual conversations. Like, I wish everybody understood the guidelines. I wish in regular, non-Celebrate Recovery Bible studies, people use the guidelines. And actually at our church at Saddleback, a lot of groups have adopted the guidelines because they're so powerful and they help so much. So let's go over them a little bit. You pulled them up off the website.
I did, yes.
And so if you want to go to celebraterecovery.com, you can find the guidelines there. We're actually going to go over the guidelines for our regular Celebrate Recovery groups, and then the extra guidelines we put in place when we put in the CRCR online groups, which is the crisis response online groups that we're temporarily doing.
Yes. Would you like to read the first one?
Sure. Number 1 is keep your sharing focused on your own thoughts, feelings, and action. please limit your sharing to 3 to 5 minutes. So there's really kind of 2 guidelines in there. One is that we keep our sharing focused on our own issues and that we limit our sharing to 3 to 5 minutes. Why? So if I come to Celebrate Recovery, I'm not allowed to talk about you or our kids or about other things, because what if that's my area? What if I'm a codependent, which I am? And
we're gonna talk about that at the summit.
but when we talk about own thoughts and feelings, we're not saying you can't talk about other people and what happened, but we're trying to put them through the lens of our experience.
Yeah, how you feel, how I feel, how I responded, how I reacted, the choices that I made.
If you and I were in a conflict and I went to a CR group, which would never happen because we're never in conflict because we have a perfect marriage. But if we were if we were ever in conflict and I went to Celebrate Recovery, I could talk about that conflict, but the guideline would come in is if I just took 3 minutes complaining about you or talking about what you did.
Yes.
I could mention it, but then I would need to turn it and start talking about how it affected me, what my part in it was, how I'm feeling about it.
Yes.
Even if I felt like I don't have a part, still how I feel about it and what's happening in my life, that would be a part of something that I would need to share on. And then the 3 to 5 minutes. Why is having 3 to 5 minutes so important?
Because then everybody has a chance to share. I know that, I've done a bunch of women's Bible studies before going in and doing an open share group or a step study. So in these other Bible studies, women, we love to talk. Sorry, we're getting all kinds of texts. We love to talk. And because it's healing and that's how we're wired. And so sometimes there were many times at a Bible study where 1 or 2 women had a chance to share and the time would run out and the rest of the women in the group didn't get a chance to share.
Right.
And even though it was very important for those women to share, these women over here who didn't necessarily get a chance to share might have had something that they needed to share as well that was equally important, or they were going through a breakthrough as well. And so that 3 to 5 minute time limit really gives everybody a chance to share.
Yeah, it gives everybody a chance to share, and it also allows us to kind of keep our sharing focused. If you were to say, hey, talk for 20 So we have that guideline 3 to 5 minutes. So some of you are going to say, well, I have a group that only has 3 people. So do we still need to share 3 to 5 minutes? Yes, you do. Well, we've got 30 people. What do we do then? Guess what? Everybody's not going to be able to share 3 to 5 minutes. So until you're able to split the group, you may only be able to share 1 or 2 minutes. The whole thing is that a lot of people will say, well, what if somebody is sharing and they're having a breakthrough and we cut them off in 5 minutes? But really, Celebrate Recovery isn't the place for a breakthrough for somebody in that way.
Well, and there's ways around it. So that's why we value co-leaders, because if somebody is having a moment where they're crying or they're having a breakthrough, and you can tell that they're going to have a hard time continuing on in group, the co-leader can say, "Hey, do you want to step outside of the room with me for a couple of minutes, and we can pray together, or we can continue having this conversation." That way, it protects everybody else in the group as well. Because the goal is we really do want to keep the group safe for everybody in the group. Yeah. Safe and productive. Actually, if you read the guidelines, it does say safe and productive.
Yeah, and while somebody may be in this seat having a breakthrough, and so you say, we're going to shut down the guidelines, we're going to let that person share the whole time. What if the person right next to them was about to have a breakthrough as well?
Absolutely.
But they're not able to share because we've turned the meeting over to one person. And so we keep the sharing focus on our own thoughts and feelings. We limit our sharing to 3 to 5 minutes.
Yes.
What's the second guideline?
Oh, if I could keep my iPad from closing. Guideline number 2, there is no crosstalk. Crosstalk is when 2 people engage in a dialogue during the meeting. Each person is free to express his or her feelings without interruptions.
So Cheryl Baker, co-founder of Celebrate Recovery, just said hello on there as well. And so she is somebody who also really values the guidelines.
Yes.
And when you were sharing about the guidelines at a summit, you brought her out as the big guns about this very thing, because crosstalk has become a little bit misunderstood. So crosstalk is really about 2 people talking over each other, answering questions, having a conversation, somebody saying, oh, great point, or oh, I like that, or when Jenny said this. But crosstalk became a whole series of things. You can't nod your head when someone shares. You can't pass a tissue. You can't laugh if somebody tells a joke.
Yeah, I asked Cheryl when I was writing the guidelines to talk last year, I said, what is the heart of this guideline? What is it that why did you guys write this guideline? And she said, so that people wouldn't be interrupted while they're sharing.
Right.
Verbally interrupted. I think there's so much value in being able to share from your heart without being interrupted. And I think there's a lot of good intentions.
Right.
People can have a lot of good intentions and interrupt you, and they're not trying to be rude and they're not trying to be dismissive. Maybe they're trying to comfort you verbally. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you, or you're doing great, or any kind of verbal, but it is an interruption. And so the heart of this guideline is that everybody has a chance to share without interruptions. And so it did get too legalistic.
Yeah.
It did
Where
get
you
very
could nod if
legalistic.
somebody was sharing, and that's just called active listening. If somebody's talking, I'm sure some of you are looking at your screen, and as we're talking, you're nodding along. That's called active listening.
And it's affirming.
And so, and passing a tissue, I'm just going to say it here. We said it a couple weeks ago with the Powells as well, is not crosstalk. So just going to keep that out there. Some of you are going to disagree with me.
No, that's very controversial. That's why I brought Cheryl on, by the way. I
some of
said
you
I'm
could
going to bring her
disagree.
out and ask her on stage, the summit stage, is it crosstalk to pass a tissue?
Yeah.
And she said no.
So we're running. We're kind of going along. So
All
let's.
right.
So the third guideline is we're here to support one another, not fix one another. So that means we don't offer book suggestions. We don't quote Bible verses to each other. We don't say, what you should do that really worked for me. We don't say, hey, you should go see my psychologist, or you should read. And the reason is that if we could fix ourselves, we wouldn't need to be in that group.
Yes.
And if we could fix ourselves, if we can fix other people, we should be able to fix ourselves. And so even if you have a long time of recovery, our job as a leader, my job is not to fix the people in my group. My job is to support the people in my group. Now, as a sponsor, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Johnny, what book should I read on this? I can say, read this book, or do this thing, or talk to this person, or here's something that really helped me. But we don't want that happening in group. And so we're here to support one another, not fix one another. So often we have these sayings or these little things that we say where we go, it's not as bad as, or at least you have this, or look on the bright side. And those things, like you were talking earlier about crosstalk, can feel positive, but they're actually belittling and they make people feel bad.
Yes.
And so we're not there to fix one another. And so I know this is one that I was talking about earlier. So wait, so far you've said I only get 3 to 5 minutes to talk. No one's going to talk during my talk or ask me any questions, and then no one's going to fix me. How does this thing even work? But the reality is those things allow the Holy Spirit to work in our lives because other voices aren't coming in and trying to fix us. So we're here to support one another, not fix one another.
And fixing someone, if you share something about yourself and someone says something, you shouldn't feel that way, and try to be comforting, or they try to tell you,
Right.
let me tell you, this is how you should do it, or this is how I did it, hurtful. That can be so hurtful.
Yep.
Because maybe they've tried that before, or you don't understand their situation completely. There's so many reasons.
And here's what's great. If you're in a group, if I was in a group and I was sharing and I felt like somebody in their share was trying leader, and the leader is there to enforce these guidelines.
That's a sneaky fix.
The leader is there to say, oh, I'm so sorry, Johnny, no fixing, right? Seems like you're trying to fix, no fixing right now.
Yeah.
Or no book recommendations, or whatever that is. We have so much we could say about this, but the guideline is there's no fixing. What's the fourth guideline?
Anonymity and confidentiality are basic requirements. What is shared in the group stays in the group. The only exception is when someone threatens to injure themselves or others.
Yeah. This is such a good comment that I want to read it. Jackie said, seems like sometimes we feel like what we have to say is more important than what everybody else is saying. And one thing that's so powerful about the guidelines is they teach us how to be good listeners. When I am in a 1 hour open share group, if I get 3 to 5 minutes to share, the rest of that time, 50 plus minutes, I'm listening to other people talk. And so it teaches me how to do that. It teaches me how to listen. I know that recovery groups have made me a better listener here than I was before, because I've learned, hey, don't fix people. It's not helpful.
Well, there's so much value in learning. That's how we learn from each other. We're supposed to learn from each other, hearing each other's experiences. And that we wouldn't get that if we were constantly talking over each other, or sharing so long that not everybody got a chance to share, or fixing each other.
Right. So good work, Jackie. So the fourth guideline ensures that anything we share in the group stays in the group. There is an exception. The only exception is when someone threatens to injure themselves or others. In that case, we will have to. Many states were mandated reporters as leaders, and so if you were to say that you were thinking of taking your own life, again, as Jenny was saying, a co-leader would take you out of the room, you'd have a conversation, and then if they felt like that was necessary, they would come tell the ministry leader, and then we would escalate from there, probably call the national hotline or do different things like that. And we read that every time. Yes. Because we don't want you to feel like we bait and switched you. Yes. So we're going to read the exception every time we get together. The only exception is when someone threatens to injure themselves or others. We want to keep you alive. We want to keep you alive. We want to keep you here. We know that God has great things in store for you. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope and a future." God has plans for each and every one of you watching. He has plans for us. And so you may be in a place where you're depressed and you're battling those thoughts, and we want to help you find the healing that is possible for you. Mm-hmm. So everything else, though, everything else you share is going to stay in that group. And this is one of the guidelines that we are the most strict on.
Well, yes. Yeah, it's if you don't feel that you're protected, that what you say stays confidential, you're not going to share.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to be honest. And without honesty, there's no healing.
Right.
And so 100%, this is, I mean, I think you could say arguably that each one of these guidelines protects someone's dignity
100%.
When they come in to celebrate recovery. But this one is like the big glaring obvious.
This one means that you can go in a group, you can talk for 3 to 5 minutes, and we're going to clap, we're going to say thank you for sharing. That's super weird. You'll get used to it. We're going to clap, say thank you for sharing, and then we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. You could run into me at Ralph's or Kroger's or something, and you could say, hey, remember the thing I shared about? I'm going to go, mm-mm.
Well, and this applies to people within the group,
yes.
Right? So 2 ladies, if I attend an open share group and I share, 2 ladies in that group are not allowed to discuss what I shared outside of group.
Yep. Amongst themselves.
That would be considered gossip. So we really protect what you say. We read
that's what I meant by we're strict. This is one of the things we're the most strict on.
Yeah, and we read these guidelines at every open share group, every single time. We read them at every step study, every single time, every meeting, no matter what.
Yeah. So the 5th one is that there's no offensive language in a Christ-centered recovery group. This includes graphic descriptions. And so the reason for that is, yes, we're talking about taking the Lord's name in vain. We're talking about cussing, but we're also talking about describing things too graphically that could be a trigger for someone else. And so what we teach everybody at Saddleback is if they feel like a sharing is getting too graphic, they just raise their hand. And then the leader will say, hey, can you just tone that down a little? Let's talk individually, because those things could be triggering to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we have 3 other guidelines that are really important during. So those are the 5 small group guidelines we talk about all the time. They cover open share group and they cover step study. Because of the COVID-19, we had to pivot and start CRCR online groups that are all happening on Zoom. And so we came up with 3 brand new guidelines for these to make sure that they're safe as possible while you're meeting online.
Yes. So the first additional guideline is all members must use headphones. This will ensure that no one else can overhear what is being shared.
Yep. And so I know there's been a lot of questions about that. That is a way to make sure that everybody else feels safe in the group as well. Mm-hmm. In some ways, it's kind of like wearing a mask in public, right? Yeah. Some ways wearing the mask in public also helps other people feel safe. You may think, I don't need to wear this. I don't have this thing. I'm not going to spread it to anybody else. But wearing the mask shows everybody else that you're taking it seriously as well. Mm-hmm. So even if you live alone, you may be asked to wear headphones because it says to everybody else in the group who may not know that they have it on as well. Number 7 is all members must be on camera. And that is to ensure a couple of things. 1, that you're alone, and 2, that you are who you say you are. Yep. Right?
Yep, absolutely. And it says, if the group leader asks, participants must show the rest of the group that no one else is in the room. And please do not leave your chair while the meeting is going.
Yeah, which is hard, right? I mean, again, but think about if you were on your church campus in a room, how distracting it would be to get up and walk away, right? And so we ask that everybody stays in their chair. It's just another way to keep the group safe. The last one is the meetings will not be recorded. And that is important that you know that as a participant, that what you're sharing is not being recorded. Mm-hmm. Somebody was asking about the Zoom logins and passwords and things like that. Go to celebraterecovery.com, find a group in your area and reach out to them, because they're individual to each Celebrate Recovery. We don't have national ones. We're trying to keep it at the church level. And so celebraterecovery.com, find a group, reach out to them, ask if they're doing CRCR online groups. Not every church is, because of safety concerns and things like that.
Absolutely.
But if they are, they'll give you that information. Now, quick note on CRCR online groups before we are out of time, but we're just going to finish up with this. As soon as your church can start in-person groups and you're back to a normal Celebrate Recovery, we ask that you shut down your CRCR online groups. The second CR is crisis response. Yeah. They are in response to what happened with the lockdown, with the quarantines and all those things. They are not meant to replace face-to-face in-person meetings. And so right now, like at Saddleback Church, we're in the process, sort of like our state, of doing different phases. Yeah. When we're back to full phased open with large group and open shares and step studies, we will not have CRCR online groups. And there will be a time that we will be saying we're done with those things as well. Okay, I think we're done with our time.
We are. That went fast. I mean, we could talk longer about the guidelines.
We could talk about the guidelines all day. And in fact, sometimes we do. I love the guidelines. I try to follow them all the time. The other day, I had to call somebody out on Crosstalk, and he said, all I wanted to know was if you wanted fries with your burger. And I said, fine, but you're going to listen to me. I have 3 to 5 minutes. Didn't really happen.
Oh, my goodness.
But still, it's funny. Hey, but thank you so much for joining us. If you want to hear more about what makes your Celebrate Recovery safe, we're going to share some of the other things that also keep you safe and Celebrate Recovery as well. So go to crsummits.com. We would love for you to join us there. And we're so excited about the summit. Mm-hmm. And man, thank you so much for joining us. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, or if you're watching this later on YouTube, we love you. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to say goodbye now. So first, I'm going to say goodbye to Facebook. Bye, Facebook. Thank you so much.